Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Quit Coaches Corner here on WSTU and WPSL. We're talking high school sports. The high school football season is almost half over. We've had 5 weeks in the regular season, down 6 weeks to go, and then the playoffs. So I can't believe we're flying right through. And we've got some teams taking shape, and we got some big matchups coming up, and those big matchups start this week with most teams taking part in some form of district matchup on Friday night. So we are going to try and quickly run through the games from week 5. We did learn some things, and there were some fantastic games that we got to talk about. And then we're going to look ahead to what's coming up on Friday night. So stay with us here at the Quit Coaches Corner on WSTU and WPSL. We, on Friday night, were out at Martin County High School, and we got to see the Tigers hosting the Centennial Eagles. And, of course, we all have seen the gaudy numbers that Centennial has put up throughout the season. Their points for, they've blown out teams that they've played this year. They were undefeated coming into Friday night. They'd had 2 shutouts already on the season. Their defense is playing great, and in many regards, it looked like District 8A was going to come down. We know it was a 3-way race between Vero, Centennial, and Treasure Coast, but I think a lot of people said it's Vero and Centennial that are really playing for keeps there at the top, and Treasure Coast might be able to surprise one of them because they're a good team, but not on paper going to match up with Centennial and Vero Beach. And I don't know if I agree with that narrative after Friday night. First, let's break down the game. Of course, the Martin County Tigers ended up punting to Centennial, or kicking off to Centennial to start the game. Centennial started with a huge play on the first game, going all the way down to Martin County's 38-yard line, but then they couldn't do anything else after that. Martin County's defense played pretty well in this game, forced a punt there from their own 34-yard line. So the punt from Centennial was bad. It was 4th and 4, and you're in no man's land. And a lot of times you see football coaches go for it when you're on that part of the field. You're in opposing team's territory at the 34-yard line. It's 4th down. You need to get to the 28 to convert. So I guess it was 4th and 6, excuse me. 4th and 6, you're at their 34-yard line. If you go to kick a field goal, you're looking at a 51-yarder, 50-yarder from where they are. So that's too far for most high school legs. Most high school kickers can't kick a 50-yarder. We're not all Donald De La Hayes out there who can kick 60-yarders in warm-ups. So you're not going to go out there and kick a field goal and give up good field position. But if you go to punt, there's always the chance that you're going to kick it out of bounds or kick it out the end zone, and the other team's going to get the ball at the 20, and now you're looking at a net 14-yard punt. That's not great either. So a lot of coaches look at the scenario and say, we're just going to go for it. Centennial didn't do that. They opted to punt for it, and not only was it a bad result for them, it was worse than it could have been had it just gone out the back of the end zone. They would have been better off booting that ball out the back of the end zone and giving the ball to Martin County at their own 20-yard line. Instead, the ball went out of bounds off the side of the foot of the punter, and Martin County took over at their own 32-yard line, a net 2-yard punt. Martin County took over. They actually looked pretty good going up against that vaunted Eagles defense. They get a couple of early runs. They pass for a first down on their first 3rd and long that they faced in the game. They picked up a second first down. They got George Johnson sacked for a loss of 4, but they were able to recover and pick up another first down. They had 3 first downs on their opening drive, and then Martin County fumbled the football away. They had gotten all the way down to Centennial's 27-yard line, and they turned the ball over, and Centennial was able to recover. And this was In many ways, a defensive matchup. Martin County's defense played very, very well. Centennial's defense played very well. I was impressed with how close Martin County made it throughout. It was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter, and there were back-to-back interceptions of the Centennial quarterback, Brian Watkins. He threw 2 picks back-to-back, and that gave Martin County's offense some good chances. They couldn't convert, though, and there's only so long you can keep a team like Centennial where they've got some great talent all over the field. You can only keep them down for so long, and Cedric Wilcox IV made him pay with just one play. With 7 minutes and 13 seconds remaining in the first half, he takes a handoff and does some nifty footwork, spins out of a tackle, and runs 73 yards downfield for the first touchdown of the game. George Johnson would throw an interception on the ensuing drive, and 2 plays after the turnover, Wilcox did it again, this one from 74 yards out, and Centennial led 14-0. Martin County went on another long, successful drive. This was their longest drive of the game and probably their most successful drive of the game. They got the ball back, trailing 14-0, with 4:21 left to go in the second quarter, and they were pinned back inside their 20 at the 18-yard line. But a couple of defensive penalties on Centennial, and George Johnson was getting into a groove, completing some passes, and they were able to work their way past midfield, and they got to the 42-yard line of Centennial and ran out of time. That's what happened with that drive. They were driving, they were looking good, they were getting some rhythm, they were getting help from the defense of Centennial, but they ran out of time at the half, and it was all over after that. Martin County's offense never really threatened too much again in the second half. A couple of 3-and-outs to start the third quarter. Meanwhile, Cedric Wilcox IV picked up his third touchdown run to pretty much put the game out of reach, and Centennial would go on to beat Martin County 30-0. So Centennial got the job done, and you look at the score and you say they beat Martin County 30-0. They continue to roll, and they are extremely impressive. But I just have to say I was surprised at how well Martin County hung in there. I thought Centennial was going to show me a little bit more. Treasure Coast dominated the week before against Martin County. They ran all over them at will, and their defense completely shut the door on Martin County's offense for all but a 4-minute window at the end of the second quarter. And Martin County was able to go on some long, sustained drives offensively. They were able to move the football. Their defense played well. They were able to force a couple of turnovers on the Eagles. I'm willing to chalk this up to just a bad night for the Eagles, but I'm more intrigued to maybe say that Treasure Coast should be the team that has the best chance to knock off Vero Beach. Because if Treasure Coast plays against Vero the way that I've seen them play so far this year, I think they have a good chance at winning. If Centennial plays the way they did against Martin County, they're not going to win. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. That's a matchup that's coming up this Friday night, Centennial and Vero Beach. It's a battle of the unbeatens, but it almost wasn't. Vero Beach actually struggled on the road. Of course, they were going up against the state powerhouse in Pahokee, and this was just a wild game. Pahokee scored first, and then Vero answered with 13 points in the second quarter. So they were up 7 points at halftime, 13-6. Soon as the third quarter started, things fell apart for at least 26 seconds anyway. So first, Vero Beach was tackled in their own end zone for a safety on the kickoff. 2 points for Pahokee, and Pahokee gets the football. On the ensuing kickoff, Pahokee returned it for a touchdown. So now they're leading Now they are up on top of Vero Beach for the second time in this game. And then on the next drive, Vero Beach, they're stunned. They get the ball back. They're suddenly losing. They thought they were supposed to get the ball to start and maybe go up by 2 scores in the third quarter. And just before they can even blink and realize what's happening, they've given up a safety and they've given up a touchdown. And now they're getting the ball back trailing. And I think they were shell-shocked, and they threw a pick six on the next play, on the next drive. So suddenly, Vero Beach went from winning 13-6 and getting the football to losing 20-13. Now, most teams would be completely deflated after a sequence like this, but good teams rise above them. And Vero is definitely a good team. Early in the fourth quarter, they tied the game on a 16-yard touchdown run from Brian Primus Winston. And then with a minute to go in the game, Jafari Harvey returned to fumble 6 yards for the game-winning touchdown. The late game heroics means that Vero gets consecutive regular season win number 48, and it sets the stage for a battle between the unbeatens this Friday when Centennial will host Vero Beach in a District 8A matchup. Centennial and Vero Beach both 5-0. Vero Beach has been ranked in the top 10 in Class 8A by the Associated Press all season long. Centennial's getting some honorable mentions, but they haven't cracked into the rankings just yet. But that game is going to be Friday night at 7 o'clock at South County Stadium in St. Lucie County, up in St. Lucie West. And on paper, this should be a good one. It's, of course, the district opener for both teams. And both of these teams have playoff potential. Both of these teams believe that they have what it takes to make a run at the state championship and make a run through the playoffs. And the best way to get into the playoffs and to secure a run is to win your district. So this is a key game. This is the first key game for both of these teams. It's the district opener. It's the area's only unbeaten teams. The only two teams left on the Treasure Coast that are unbeaten. Then you look at the Eagles' defense. They've allowed just 12 points this season with 3 shutouts. That ties a school record for most shutouts in a season. You look at Vero's defense. They've allowed just 1 touchdown in the past 18 quarters. Offensively, these guys have scored a lot of points too. Vero Beach, going into last week's game, they've scored, I believe it was 40 points or more in every single week. And Centennial scoring 30 points against Martin County last week seemed like it was an off week for them. And it was an off week for them. They turned the ball over 3 times. So they've got great offenses. They've got great defenses. It's going to be fun to watch that one play out. I think Vero Beach is going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it a little bit easier than some people might have thought. And I am easier than I would have thought going in. I thought Centennial was going to give Vero Beach a run for their money. And like I said, maybe the game Friday night against Martin County was an off week for Centennial. It happens. Good teams sometimes just don't play well on any given Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever the day is. And sometimes teams get caught looking ahead. And if you're Centennial, you certainly could understand why they would be looking ahead past a 1-3 Martin County squad to the undefeated district foe Vero Beach coming up the week after. So there's a lot of stuff there, but it's question marks for Centennial that I didn't have before. And I think with the single wing offense that Treasure Coast runs, I think they've got a chance to beat both Vero Beach and Centennial. And Treasure Coast is coming off of a good win of their own. They just beat Matanzas on Friday night, 35-7. Treasure Coast cruised to an easy win. They scored 5 touchdowns in the first half, had a running clock in the second. Matanzas only scored in the fourth quarter when the game was all but over. So Treasure Coast rolling through the first part of the season, and they've had some very difficult games that they've played. They did have a loss earlier this year, but they're opening up district play Friday night as well when they go on the road to take on Fort Pierce Central, who is a team that has struggled this year. They're 1-3 on the season, and they're coming off of a better performance, but still a loss in showdown against Fort Pierce Westwood. We'll get to that game in just a minute because that was a classic as well. But Central, the positive for Central is it looks like they might have found their quarterback. The downside is I don't know if just finding your quarterback, while it's a great step for the program, I don't think it's going to be enough to get them to compete against Treasure Coast. If Treasure Coast goes out there and they just take care of business, they run the single wing, they can score more points than Fort Pierce Central was going to be able to score. So I think Treasure Coast is going to be able to get that win. And I'm curious. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty confident Vero Beach is going to be able to take care of business, even on the road, going up against Centennial. And that's going to set up some interesting playoff potential games in the second half of the season, specifically when Centennial and Treasure Coast meet up, because I don't know with the new point system if both of those teams will be able to make the regional tournament. If, say, Centennial were to win the district or Treasure Coast wins the district, I do think Vero Beach would be close to a lock to make the playoffs. But I haven't seen any of the point systems, the point standings yet out of the FHSAA. I do think the one team that can maybe lose the district and still have a good chance at making the playoffs might be Treasure Coast because of how difficult their schedule is. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But this is going to be a good Friday night. Number 4, Vero Beach going on the road, taking on Centennial. Battle of the Unbeatens Friday night. The other game that we're covering Friday night is going to be Martin County and South Fork. It's Martin Bowl 35. And all eyes are going to be on Martin County's George Johnson, quarterback. He's been a star in this series since he was a freshman, going up against the defense for South Fork, and specifically the linebacker, Camp Gobler. Now, Martin County's offense has struggled the last 2 weeks, in large part because their offensive line has not been able to stop outside pressure. Treasure Coast and Centennial were able to do whatever they wanted defensively. They were getting to Johnson before he was finishing his 3-step drop. And he's a phenomenal athlete, and he was able to keep plays alive and roll outside the pocket, but it wears on you. You want to be able to run your offense the way it's designed, and I can't imagine that the Martin County offense is designed to let the defensive lineman in from the outside and crash the quarterback. I just can't imagine that that's on purpose. If Martin County's offensive line doesn't improve and South Fork is able to do even some of what Treasure Coast and Centennial did, maybe they're not in on every play, but maybe they're in there on half the plays, I think it's going to be a long night for Martin County's offense. And what we saw Centennial doing that worked so well is they would rush 3, maybe 4, and they would stick a linebacker, maybe sometimes 2 linebackers, to spy Johnson and follow him wherever he went. So the defensive ends would crash on Johnson. He would break a tackle, scramble out, and as he's running to the sideline, now the spy backs, the linebackers their job is to sit and watch the quarterback, they can follow with him and prevent him from ripping off the big run. It's not going to work every time, but it's been pretty effective the last couple of weeks. And I think that would be, with Camp Gobler able to rush the quarterback in scenarios like that and able to sit back and spy on Johnson and try to keep him in check, that's going to be a fantastic matchup to watch. And I'm looking forward to seeing that one Friday night. The other thing is going to be South Fork's offense. Have they improved enough from early in the season to move the football and score points? I don't know. Which Martin County defense are we going to see? The defense that couldn't stop the run against Treasure Coast, or the defense that took this Centennial team and, despite giving up long touchdowns to Cedric Wilcox and despite giving up 30 points, still played pretty well and frustrated at times this Centennial offense and forced 3 turnovers? If that defense shows up, that's going to be a huge advantage for Martin County. But if South Fork can start running the football, control the clock, and finish off drives and get some points, and their defense can get to Johnson, could be South Fork celebrating at the end of the day. Martin Bowl 35. Martin Bowl's always a fantastic game. We love it each and every year. We will be out there broadcasting Friday nights. We get started at 6:45, and the kickoff is scheduled for 7 o'clock. You should definitely come on out and check out the game. It is busy. It is always packed for these Martin Bowl games. So make sure to give yourself plenty of time to get out there and check out the game. Another rivalry that wrapped up last week, and we'll touch on this before we end today's show. Showdown 39, Fort Pierce Central at Fort Pierce Westwood. The game was played Saturday morning, and it's another classic game in this annual rivalry game between Central and Westwood. Westwood started the scoring in the first quarter. They took a 6-0 lead on a short passing touchdown from Coy Gray to DeAndre Dixon. But Central would answer with 10 points, including a 78-yard passing touchdown from Lance Bianchini to Justin Ortiz. Westwood scored again in the second quarter on a pick 6, and Westwood led at halftime 12-10. In the third quarter, Central retook the lead. Bianchini and Ortiz hooking up for their second touchdown of the day. The 2-point conversion was good, and Central led 18-12. Fast forward to the last minute of the fourth quarter. Westwood has the ball, but they're running out of time. Willie Lewis scores on a 43-yard passing touchdown from Jonius Watkins with just 42 seconds left to go in regulation. The 2-point conversion, no good, and we're tied at 18 going into overtime. And that is where Jannard Jones scored on a 10-yard run to give Westwood the 26-18 lead in the 26-18 win. It's Westwood's second straight showdown victory after losing 6 straight, and they've improved to 4-1 on the season. I think there's a lot of positives to come out of this game. First, it's great to see a good game in that rivalry. 2, Fort Pierce Central might have found their quarterback, so we'll see how the rest of the season plays out for him. And 3, Westwood's 4-1. They are going to be a playoff team, it looks like. They're already 1-0 in the district by beating Port St. Lucie. They've got to defeat Suncoast to clinch back-to-back district championships. I think they can do it. And football on the Treasure Coast is just better when Westwood's playing out there and having fun and winning games. That's it for us with the Quit Coaches Corner this week. We will see you guys next week here on WPSL and WSTU.